What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Engage 8 pod. I'm your host, Zach, with my two co-hosts, Josh and Mike. Today, we're going to be recapping what's happened through week 6 so far. That'll include Thursday Night Football, the 1 and 4 o'clock slate games today, and then as we're recording right now, we're watching Sunday Night Football, so we'll get to that at the end of the episode. So, Josh, you want to get us going on some Thursday night?
Yes, I will. Thursday Night Football, Broncos at Chiefs. The Broncos lose their 16th straight game to the Kansas City Chiefs, which is, I believe, the current longest streak versus one team. The Chiefs defense continues to just be dominant. The Broncos really were known for before this game, their defense being horrible and Rush being an improvement from last season. That's really the two storylines. And the Chiefs defense shut down Russ this week. They didn't score until the last a little bit of the fourth quarter there when they got their 8 points, and they held Sean Payton from getting his first ever shutout on offense. But Chiefs dominated this game, although they only won by one touchdown.
Yeah, I was going to touch on it a little bit. Mahomes, the last few weeks, honestly, he's looked a little slow. Like he's just still trying to figure things out for this year, even though we are in week 6. Having Kelsey back certainly helps. He had 9 catches for 124 yards. But on the Broncos side, yeah, they couldn't get anything going really. No run game. Russell Wilson had under 100 yards passing, 2 interceptions. It was really gross. Cortland Sutton had a nice touchdown grab though, so that was cool.
Yeah, Mahomes, he really seems to kind of be struggling with the new receivers. He was 7 for 7 with 109 yards with just Kelsey in the first half. And then outside of Kelsey, he was 8 for 16 with 53 passing yards. So he was struggling with some of the younger guys, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice. And then he threw his 5th interception on a play where he should have just went down and taken the sack. Bad play. He's currently on pace to have a career high in interceptions with 14. So he's got to stop turning the ball over. But Travis Kelsey, like you guys said, great game. Russell Wilson, he had been looking better than he did last year so far this year. And this week he just did not have it. He held the ball way too long, and he only had 60 passing yards going into the fourth quarter. So rough game for Russell Wilson, and the Chiefs defense continues to look great. Nick Bolton had another phenomenal game, and Chiefs defense won them the game.
Yep. Like you said, love Bolton. He's been great all season. He had to miss a couple games early, but ever since he's been out there, he's been phenomenal. Him and Chris Jones have really just anchored this defense into being the best defense that Mahomes has had in his career so far. The problem is Mahomes has been a little sloppy. He's had uncharacteristic interceptions, like you guys both said, and the offense has looked stagnant at times. I know a lot of the times, though, we'll see Andy Reid just kind of messing around in the regular season. A lot of trick plays, a lot of gadget stuff. It never seems like they're giving it their all on offense in the regular season. If this defense can keep performing like they are right now in the playoffs, and then that playoff offense kicks in for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, it's going to be ugly, and I don't know how many teams that can beat them. But as of right now, the Chiefs are doing just enough on offense and plenty on defense.
Yeah, it's for playoffs at least. It's going to come down to the supporting cast around Mahomes, like this defense, if they continue to keep playing like this, like you said. And honestly, the young receivers, they got Rashee Rice and Sky Moore mainly at the outside spots, and then Pacheco at running back, who's going to be catching out of the backfield. But teams are going to try and take away Kelsey in the playoffs. They try to do it every year, but it's Travis Kelsey. He's going to keep doing what he does. But Mahomes is going to have to rely on other guys. He had Juju last year and Kadarius Toney a little bit. He had kind of a solid run, but this year he hasn't looked too great. Those other guys are going to have to step up in order for them to have that playoff success offensively.
100%. And on the Broncos side, they really need to start getting their run game going. Javonte Williams struggled. Jaleel McLaughlin, he struggled. They just need to find out the run game, but I think it might be too little too late at this point. They're sitting at 1-5. A lot of trade talks running. A lot of their players, they've cut Randy Gregory, they've cut Frank Clark. Actually, I think they traded Randy Gregory, and they're trying to trade Frank Clark, but he's on waivers. So the Broncos, it's already looking like next year they're going to have a young QB. It'll be interesting to see where Russell Wilson goes, but Chiefs defense dominated. The Chiefs defense looks great, and Mahomes just has to clean it up.
Yep. Moving on to the London game, the third London game in a row. I believe this is the last one of the year as well. And the Ravens beat the Titans in a field goal fest, to be honest with you. John Harbaugh, who has been a guy who is known, I remember a couple years ago, it was like a big thing that whenever there was a fourth down, Lamar would run over to John Harbaugh and they'd go for it. That was not the case at all whatsoever today. And they just kicked every single field goal. I think that says a lot less about John Harbaugh and a lot more about his trust in his defense right now, and the not so much faith that he has in the Titans offense, which we all agree with. The Titans offense is just really, really bad. And personally, and Mike and I were talking about today watching the game, I just cannot imagine that Levis and Willis look so bad in practice that they look at Ryan Tannehill and they're like, oh, yeah, that's the guy 100%. I don't understand how that's even possible, but they obviously see something that we don't.
I think it's probably the GM having a little bit of his take on it. Like he's paying so much money for him, you might as well start him, but and just give those guys a chance to just mature a little bit on the sidelines. But if you look at the box score, you would think that maybe the Titans actually had a chance in this game. But going into halftime, it was like what 18-3 or something because of that muffed punt with like 5 or 4 seconds left that set up Justin Tucker for another field goal, and then I think it was beginning of the second half or middle of the third quarter or something that Derrick Henry had that fake toss out of the Wildcat that he broke for like 60 yards and really got the Titans offense moving. So they really built off that, but outside of that, they didn't really move the ball well at all. And Tannehill, like you guys both meant, or like you mentioned, Josh, he's just not it. I don't know what it is, but Malik Willis, we got a little bit of him in the 2-minute offense, so that was nice to see.
Yeah, Malik Willis, he looked all right in the 2-minute offense. I mean, Josh said it. We don't understand how it could look worse. Ryan Tannehill only had 76 yards and an interception before he left the game early in the fourth quarter. Just not going to get it done. I know the Ravens defenses looked very good, but besides that big run, Derrick Henry wasn't great today. Tyjae Spears had a nice reception for 48 yards. So he's looked very explosive so far. Ryan Tannehill did get hurt in the game. Like he said, he was carted to the locker room and he was spotted on crutches after the game. So it looks like it probably will be either Malik Willis or Will Levis next week. I imagine it's Malik Willis, but the Titans offense continues to struggle. They can't get much going. And they had a little glimmer of hope coming back, but Ryan Tannehill threw a bad interception and Baltimore was able to dominate the game from there on out. Zay Flowers got his first touchdown. And the MVP of the game was really Justin Tucker, 6 field goals. He did have a PAT block, but 18 points just from Justin Tucker. And yeah, the Ravens just played conservative, which is surprising to see.
Yeah, I think you can play conservative when you're playing the Titans and really any team that just has no firepower on offense. Ryan Tannehill getting hurt is unfortunate for them. But Malik Willis, like you guys both said, looked pretty good in his time out there. He had some circumstances that were not his fault. 5 passing attempts and 4 sacks in his short time in the game, which some of the sacks might have been on him. He was a little wild out there, but for the most part, he wasn't getting blocks whatsoever from that Titans O-line. The Ravens, on the other hand, Lamar, once again, 30 passing attempts, really sitting in the pocket, looking like a pocket passer this year, to be honest. And he's looked pretty great. He hasn't had any games where he has amazing stat lines, but if you watch the Ravens, you could tell Lamar Jackson's playing good football. And I think that's great to see, especially after coming off that contract. And now they go and they play the Lions next week in Baltimore. Big game, especially coming from London. So we'll see how they do in that one.
One thing I did want to talk about the last game, the Thursday night game that I forgot to mention, and it kind of goes with what you said, Mike. The kickers, Harrison Butker, he had a 60-yarder on Thursday night to go into half, which was a good momentum swing for him. And Justin Tucker, he was 6 for 6 today. So just shout out to all the kickers out there.
Yeah, good week for kickers, except for Blake Grupe. But Kyle Hamilton got ejected on a nasty helmet-to-helmet hit. I don't know if it was worth an ejection, but it was definitely a hit to the helmet. And the Ravens, they just controlled the time of possession like the Ravens offense should do. They had the ball for 11 more minutes than the Titans, which most teams do against the Titans with their offensive struggles. But Ravens played good football. They moved to 4-2. Nice win.
Yep. Just give you guys a quick update. Verlander gave up another home run. It's 2-0 Rangers in the 5th inning. But moving on to the next football game here, Vikings at Bears. The Bears offense played really poorly. Fields, 58 passing yards and a pick in his time before he got hurt. Fields getting hurt is really, really unfortunate for this Bears team. If at the absolute least you want Fields to go out there and you want to see what he can do this season, he has had a couple good games, and outside of that, he's been pretty atrocious so far, and that continued today. The Bears defense, though, on the other hand, has played well for the second week in a row, which is promising. They got a little bit healthier on the back end, but you like to see that from the Bears defense. It's just you don't like to see it in a game where your offense can't score.
Yeah, I honestly don't have much to say about the Vikings just because I'm so disappointed by the Bears. Fields, like you said, he was underwhelming at best going into his injury. And from what I read, he had a dislocated thumb, which will take about 6 weeks to fully heal, or at least to regain his movement and just like regular stuff. But the symptoms can really stay with you for up to like 6 months. So, and that's something that Russell Wilson, he had a thumb injury in 2021, and then Drew Brees, I think in 2019, before his little sharp regression, he had a thumb injury as well. So that's just, if he doesn't get back to full strength and doesn't play again, we probably have seen Justin Fields' last game in a Bears uniform, which is honestly crazy to me.
Don't forget that Russell Wilson also was training 20 hours a day during the thumb injury.
Right, he was doing push-ups in the aisle of the plane and stuff like that. Yeah,
he was working. Does Fields have that in him? 20 hours a day?
I'm sure he does, but regardless, it's such an unfortunate situation. Like you said, Josh, the main goal for this year with Fields was for him to prove that he was the guy, and then you have 2 first-round picks to shore up the talent on the defensive side and maybe even a couple extra holes around him. But now that he might not even be with you, if you still are like, if you don't have a true answer on him, you have to move off him. And from what it looks like, he won't be getting back until like week, like, I don't know, 9 or 10. And even then, he's not going to be at 100%. And the system around him, holy shit, the system. I don't even want to talk about it. It's horrible. It really is. But if that doesn't improve, then you won't be able to really see what you have. And unfortunately, that's going to be the end of his time in Chicago if he just doesn't give you any real answers by the end of the year.
Yeah, well, be grateful your quarterback at least has a chance to come back. But the Bears offense couldn't get it going against the Vikings defense, really. It's sad to see after the last 2 weeks. Every time we think the Bears might finally have it going, they seem to disappoint. And I said in the preview, I thought that the Brian Flores blitzes might throw off Justin Fields a little bit, and it seems like it threw off Justin Fields and that Bears offensive line. The Bears defensive linebackers had a good game. TJ Edwards looked great. Tremaine Edmonds looked all right. And then on the Bears offensive line, I touched on it. Cody Whitehair had a rough game, and Darnell Wright didn't really have a great game either. And down their top 2 running backs, they really were not able to get the run game going. So hopefully they can get Roschon Johnson back last week to try to find something. And just Tyson Bagent scored the lone Bears touchdown for a very poor offensive day again from the Bears.
Yep, another live update. Josh Allen is in the blue tent, and Kyle Allen is currently out there for the Buffalo offense with 4 minutes to go in the first half. But going back to the Bears game here, lack of DJ Moore opportunities was interesting, especially in the time with Fields coming off of that monster game last Thursday. You don't like to see that. For his personal stat line, this Fields injury is obviously going to really affect his season as a whole. And we'll see what the Bears do at backup quarterback. Like you said, Mike Bagent looked pretty good. I know Peterman's back there also. I don't know if you really want to go and row that boat with Peterman, but either way, you're in a tough spot. The Vikings, on the other hand, their offense looked pretty bad today too. They had the fumble touchdown, which was one of their 2 touchdowns, their only touchdown in the second half, and that really bailed out their bad offensive effort. And they got kind of a shitty win, to be honest. Didn't look good really on either side of the ball, even though, I mean, your defense played well, but we know what this Bears offense is, and especially with their backup quarterback in. So the Vikings moved to 2-4 now. The Bears fall to 1-5. I don't have confidence that either of these teams will be competitive after Thanksgiving, probably.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're the Vikings, you just got to be happy with this win, missing your best player, and just going into a place that's, I don't know, I don't even want to say tough to play. There's no bear weather, there's no competition. It's whatever. You go on the road without your best player. It's an ugly win, but it's a win regardless, and that's what you need without your best player. But the Bears, I kind of like what they did running the ball. They kind of started running the ball a lot better in the second quarter to counteract those Flores blitzes, but the scheme itself was so bad. You saw it on the first play. They lined up in 5 wide. The front they faced was a 6-man front, man coverage across the board, and this is on Fields and Getsy. How do you go into the game knowing that they're going to blitz? And then you say, you know what, we're going to start out in 5 wide and not allow him to bring in any other protection. Fields probably should have brought in a tight end or even a running back to help protect there. And then he should have known to get rid of the ball faster, got hit first play, sack. That was the story of the game, honestly. He looked lost out there. It was rough. And if I mentioned it before, if you don't have any answers out of him by the end of the year, you got to move off, and it really sucks. But the two linebackers, I said it in the preview, with TJ Hawkinson being the Vikings' best weapon, you got to get a lot out of your big money players, and they got it. TJ Edwards should have had a fumble recovery, which it was clearly a fumble recovery inbounds, in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. And then he had the tipped pass that was intercepted by the other big money backer, Jermaine Edmonds, which was great to see. TJ has been phenomenal in the run game and a little bit in the pass game, and Tremaine has been average, honestly. But these two, they're looking better than they did in each previous week, which is something you really like to see.
Yeah, Jordan Hicks had a great game, fumble return touchdown. I think he had an interception too. But the Brian Flores has been doing some good things with this defense, which isn't very talented. I could see him definitely being interviewed a couple times in the offseason for a job if he doesn't get blackballed, I guess. But Kirk Cousins, he didn't look great, but he was able to win the game, get the job done. One very bad play where he threw it backwards, but he just has to keep limiting the turnovers. And the Vikings offense, they just struggle without their top weapon. They said I think they were putting KJ Osborne in the Justin Jefferson spot. He's obviously not Justin Jefferson. So Vikings, they got the job done. I'm not confident in this team moving forward, though.
All right, moving on to Colts at Jags. Minshew, who has been pretty great so far this season, was absolutely horrible today. He was pretty lucky to only have 3 interceptions. He had one get called back and then immediately threw another one. That was pretty embarrassing as a whole. The Colts run game was really never there, to be honest, and that's a big part in not having Anthony Richardson at the helm, and you have Gardner Minshew instead, who's a completely different player. And just having 2 quarterbacks, like I've said, having 2 good quarterbacks is huge. Up until this point, we did think that Minshew was one of them. We've said that on here a bunch of times. But regardless, if you have 2 quarterbacks who are going in and out and having to play for each other, and they're 2 completely different styles, it's going to throw off the offense as a whole. And we saw that today, and the Jags defense keeps chugging along and playing great football.
I'll leave a lot of the game analysis to you, Mike. But one thing I'm really interested in seeing is how they implement Jonathan Taylor more into the offense, especially without Anthony Richardson for potentially the rest of the year. Is this really just Jonathan Taylor kind of ramping up, kind of like as his preseason per se, because he did miss those first 4 weeks? So is he just getting back into the groove of things, or do they really trust Zach Moss? But they were down for most of this game, so they weren't running the ball too much. Hence the 55 pass attempts for Minshew and those 3 interceptions. But on the other side, the Jags, Trevor Lawrence was okay. He did enough to win. ETN, he had a nice first half. I think he had both of his touchdowns in the first quarter and maybe the first half of the second quarter. But no one receiver really stood out. It feels like Calvin Ridley's he's very much obviously in the game, or he's just kind of just off to the side, just getting the occasional catch. So I really like to see him get more involved for the Jags. But like you said, Josh, their defense, they've been playing really well this year. They held the Chiefs to, I think, 17 points in week 2, and they've been playing solid ever since.
Yeah, I'll just start off with Anthony Richardson this morning. It looks like he's most likely going to need season-ending shoulder surgery. So his rookie season, which had looked very promising, a lot of good things, looks like it's going to be cut short. And a lot of the ESPN and analysts who thought, oh, Anthony Richardson should sit this whole first season are getting what they wanted. So that happened. Minshew, 3 interceptions, fumble, could have had like 5 interceptions, didn't have it. He somehow was able to get 300 plus passing yards, which is very surprising. But he just didn't have it today. Was really throwing a lot of checkdowns early. He finally opened it up a little bit late. Colts had a couple chances to get back in the second half, make it a 1-possession game, and they just couldn't capitalize. They kept turning the ball over. And then, like you said, they're still ramping up JT. I don't know how much he will get this year. I think they might, because of this Richardson injury, not use him as much. They might keep splitting it with Moss while he's here. Just try to keep Jonathan Taylor healthy for next year when Anthony Richardson will be back. We saw today the Colts were struggling to run the ball without Anthony Richardson. Last week, the Zach Moss 60-yard touchdown, if you watch it, it was very heavily influenced by Anthony Richardson. He had 2 defenders on him, was able to let Zach Moss get that 60-yard touchdown. And Colts defense, they played all right. They were put in a lot of bad positions with all the turnovers. They did kind of what they could. ETN only finished with like 50 rushing yards or something, but he did seem to look very good. Had a couple big runs. And Trevor Lawrence hurt his knee late. That's something to possibly monitor. He seemed to be all right, but they sent out their backup to do the knee. Just a sad game for the Colts. They continue to struggle in Jacksonville. Just hope they can find a way to scrape together some wins and contend for the AFC South or playoffs.
Yeah, that the run threat that there is with Anthony Richardson just can't be mimicked with Gardner Minshew, and that's a big factor, like you said, of the run game struggling today. The Jags offense did look better today. They weren't perfect, although they had 37 points. They were not all on offense, but their offense looked better than it has looked in the past couple of weeks today. So that's a promising sign for them. Like I said, their defense continues to play great, and yeah, I feel good about the Jags right now because when you look at their schedule, they do have one of the easier schedules in the NFL remaining. And coming off of last year, they were on the high. They had a little bit of a dump that we saw early on. But then you sit and you look at them now, and they're sitting at 4-2 in the division where the Colts don't have Anthony Richardson. The Texans are good, but there's question marks, and the Titans suck. So it's hard to say that this division is anything but Jacksonville's for the taking. And I think they do end up taking this division. As for the Colts, I think you just got to throw out this tape if you're Gardner Minshew. You know that there was just some boneheaded mistakes, mainly mentally, I would say for the most part with Minshew, and you just got to figure it out as the Colts because this Gardner Minshew future is unfortunately your reality, and hopefully maybe we could see AR towards the end of the season. If not, I hope that the Colts can figure out how to play with Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, I know you mentioned earlier that the analysts who were begging for Anthony Richardson to sit his first year. I don't think this is necessarily why. I think it's just the fact that he was really raw coming out of college. Yes, he had some phenomenal traits, physical and technical, but he was inexperienced, so it would have helped to sit him a little bit. I don't think anybody's going to be glad that it was an injury that sidelined him or that he's sidelined at all, but unfortunately, this is just what it is. Minshew, if the Colts want any chance, Minshew's going to have to clean it up. Like we know he really could, but if this is the Minshew we see the rest of the year, this could be a long season for the Colts.
Yeah, it could be. I had a lot of Sam Ehlinger flashbacks today, watching Gardner Minshew, a couple just bad overthrows. But the Jags were the better team. Their defense played well. Josh Allen continues to haunt the Colts. He had the strip sack, and they were able to capitalize on most of the turnovers. We're just really bummed that Anthony Richardson's going to miss the season. So exciting to watch him. But good win for the Jags. They do seem to kind of have control of the division now, especially with Anthony Richardson out. It'll be interesting to see if CJ Stroud can really battle him for it.
Yeah, I would like to see that happen, but we will see. Moving on, Commanders at Falcons. The Falcons had every opportunity to win this game late, and they just couldn't pull it off. Failed to score in the red zone towards the end of the game. Ritter made way too many mistakes and ended up losing his first career home game. I can't help but think that we're the jinx. We hyped it up a lot this week, the past couple episodes, and came crashing down on us. But Washington D played really, really well against a run game in the Falcons, which is top of the league, phenomenal. Not number one, but top of the league. I believe they're top 5. And they've been phenomenal, and the Washington D comes out and doesn't let them run the ball, forces Ritter to throw, which he's streaky at times to say the least. And we've said on here that's how you make the Falcons. That's how you beat the Falcons, and that's what they did.
From what I see, I mean, I really like what the Falcons did in terms of who they were getting the ball to. Pitts, Bijan, and London, where were all the leaders in receptions. Bijan, he had a slower game on the ground, but in the air, when you are forced to throw the ball, like the Commanders did to the Falcons, it's good to get it to your guys. Drake London had 9 catches for over 120 yards. Kyle Pitts had a touchdown, which is what we've been waiting for him to start stringing together some scores for what seems like decades now, because he's been underutilized in everyone's opinion. But it's nice to see that the Falcons are in these games. They're a very young offense and a quarterback who is in his first full year of starting. If he does want to be the guy, he's just got to clean up those mistakes, and they'll come out with this win next time. But the Commanders, Sam Howell, it felt like he did everything right today. There were a couple iffy throws, but outside of that, he played well. Terry and Curtis Samuel carried the load receiving, and Brian Robinson was leading it on the ground. Not too much because they were it's their O-line's but defensively they did their job. They shut down the Falcons' run game and forced, like you said, Josh, they forced Ritter to play quarterback, and it really worked out for him.
Yeah, I was very happy to see, again, we've been talking about it, like you said, Kyle Pitts get involved, Drake London get involved, Bijan get involved. When you use first-round draft picks on these guys, you have to keep using them. Desmond Ritter, just bad game. Three interceptions can't happen. Just like Gardner Minshew, he had over 300 passing yards. He had 2 touchdowns, but gets his first loss at home in college or the pros. Sam Howell, you said it, Zach. He looked solid. 14 for 23, didn't really make mistakes. Only 150 yards, but 3 touchdowns. He was sacked 5 times. The Commanders need to continue to find a way to find answers with that O-line. It continues to struggle. And Brian Robinson, nice touchdown. Terry McLaurin, nice to see him get involved too. Another guy who is, you just always feel like is severely underutilized. And the Commanders defense really was just the story of the game. They were able to turn over Desmond Ritter and steal a game on the road.
Yeah. Sam Howell, like you guys said, played well today. He got sacked another 5 times. I think that brings his total to 34 for the season now. He's just getting absolutely demolished. I don't even think this what was the adjective you used for this Washington O-line, Zach? You said they're yeah, I think would be an understatement. I think they're horrible, probably the worst unit in the league right now. And that continued this week. Atlanta's defense, which I love and I've been praising, still played pretty good today. They gave up 24 points. But if you're watching the game, and even honestly, you don't even need to be watching the game. You look at the stat line, it's not like Washington was out here and putting up 500 yards on them. They played pretty well on the defensive end. The offense just had nothing going. Desmond Ritter turning the ball over, 3 picks, like we said. So you hate to see that. They should have won this game, honestly. They had every opportunity to win this game, and they didn't. And now they're sitting at 3-3, and the Commanders are also sitting at 3-3. I don't know what to I kind of know what to think about the Falcons because I think they're a talented team. I think they're probably I honestly still think they win the South. And the Commanders, on the other hand, they're just a team that's all over the place. They win a tight game against the Broncos, who suck. They get blown out by the Bills. They almost beat the Eagles in Philly. They get demolished by the Bears at home, and then they go into Atlanta and beat a good Falcons team. This team is really all over the place. They're kind of a wild card. And if I had to put together a group of teams that I don't really know what to think about at this point, they're in that group.
I mean, with Washington, they're in kind of like a weird spot, like you said, Josh. But depending on what Dallas does tomorrow night against the Chargers, they could be sitting at second in their division or tied for second. So maybe they make a push for a wild card if Sam Howell can just play like he has been and just feed it to his weapons while the defense is playing really well. But like you said, the Falcons, they're in a way weaker division than them. So they've got a way clearer path because they don't have to go through the Cowboys and the Eagles. But rather than just the Bucks, who kind of got embarrassed today, which we'll get to later, and the Saints. So it's definitely 2 very different situations in terms of path to the playoffs. But the teams themselves, I feel like they're relatively similar.
Yeah, with the Commanders, like you both said, you kind of just never know what to expect, and I feel like it's been like that for a couple of years under Ron Rivera. One game they'll come out looking great, and then next week they'll come out and struggle and lose to a 0-4 team in the Bears. But on the Falcons on the other side, they definitely have a chance to win the division. I do think that the Buccaneers are going to make a run. We'll talk about it later. They didn't look great today, but they look solid overall in the Saints too. I think it's going to be close in that division, but good win for the Commanders, especially going into a hostile environment, which is Desmond Ritter playing a home game, and they're able to really shut him down. So good win for the Commanders.
Yep, moving on here. 49ers at Browns. Really a shocking performance from the Browns. We know this defense is really, really good, and we've known that all season. This offense goes in there with PJ Walker, and they beat probably the best team in the league in the 49ers. One of Brock Purdy's worst games ever. I know you're a big Brock Purdy fan, Mike. I am supporting him this year as well. I think he's a great quarterback. I do think he's elite. But today he was far from it. The Browns defense continues to play well. No matter what is happening on offense. It's very easy if you're a defense and you're a good defense and your offense is incompetent to have to play a ton of snaps. You're really, really tired. You're tired of the offense getting 3 and outs, and it's easy to slack a little bit and give up some points. This team has not done that at all, even with the injuries to their quarterback, their best their running back, Nick Chubb, I almost said best player, second best player on their team. And they're just taking it on the chin. They're playing well. And like I said, they go in there and beat a really, really good Niners team.
So kind of circling back to Purdy, this game, he was rough. Even on that final drive, like the first 3 plays, the ball placement was not there. But then that I think it was pass interference, and then he just locked in and said, "All right, I got to get this shit done." And he did. Props to him. He got it. He played phenomenal during those final like 4 plays, put his team in position to win. I respect that out of him. And that's what you want out of a good quarterback, despite how bad of a game he could have for like 95% of the game. If he can win it, put you in a position to win the game in that last 5%, that's all you want. And Purdy, he's been phenomenal up until this point. The game as a whole might not have been great, but he did his job at the end. Nonetheless, against a really talented Browns defense that we've all talked really highly of this entire season and before the season even started. And on the Brown side, with PJ Walker at quarterback, like you said, Josh, it was a shock to see this game was an actual game going into this fourth quarter. And regardless of what happened on that final drive for Cleveland, they almost won it strictly on that final drive, and then and then their defense kind of just got lucky with the missed kick. So they stay pace with the rest of the AFC North, who's ahead of them. And San Fran, luckily, they're still in a weaker-ish division, or an inconsistent division is better to describe it. But they're sitting at 5-1, and Cleveland they come out with a win.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey tied the all-time record with consecutive games with a touchdown, but he did leave the game with an oblique injury. He tried to come back, but was unable to go and went back to the locker room. Deebo Samuel also injured, did not play in the rest of the game, showed up in street clothes for the second half. Something that was very interesting to me was that Elijah Mitchell did not seem to be the RB2. When Christian McCaffrey went down, it was Jordan Mason coming in to get most of the work. So very interesting to me. And Brock Purdy, maybe I think this probably his worst game as a starting QB, but he still put his team in a position to win. Jake Moody missed the game-winning field goal. Sucks to see as an undefeated team, but on the defensive side of the ball for the 49ers, Fred Warner continues to be one of the best defensive players in football. Added another INT, and he's really worked his way into the defensive player of the year conversations with a really strong start to the season. And for the Browns, just a really gutsy, impressive win. The Jim Schwartz-led defense looked great again. Myles Garrett looked good. The secondary looked very good. Just in all aspects, they looked very solid. PJ Walker, he had that throw late that could have been a disaster for the Browns, but he was able to get it done. Houston Roughnecks legend from the XFL. Solid game. PJ Walker's always good for a win or two, though, in the season, no matter what, whenever he comes in as a backup. Just very impressive win for the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, Fred Warner looks like Bobby Wagner out there sometimes. So I think that's a fair mess up. But these two teams, big picture, like you said, the CMC injuries and the Debo injury is very crucial to this team. We saw in the second half, it really took a lot away from Brock Purdy in this offense. But big picture, you're looking at the Browns at 3-2. Like you said, Zach, they're keeping pace with everybody else in that division now, which is big as they wait the Deshaun Watson return. And the Niners, yes, they still have their division lead, so this game wasn't detrimental to them. But now they lose the lead on the NFC that they had and that they shared with the Eagles, as now there's a 3-way tie with them, the Eagles, and Detroit for first place in the NFC. So they lose that game there. I know I said on here earlier last week, I thought they were going to go 11-0. I guess that's a good old-fashioned jinx for me.
One thing I did want to point out from the Brown side, Amari Cooper is giving me some pre-Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins. Like, he's producing with DTR at QB, with PJ Walker at quarterback, and even on Deshaun Watson's bad days. Today, he had one of the craziest catches I've actually ever seen. In that cover 2 hole shot down the sideline, overthrown ball, somehow still gets the feet in bounds. You saw everybody on the sideline just, yeah, he got it. It was disgusting. So just wanted to shout him out real quick. And yeah, Cleveland, they somehow came away with this win against a team that we all really couldn't pick against until they proved that they could lose.
Yeah, Amari Cooper he seems to be consistent everywhere he goes. He's kind of just flown under the radar a little bit in Cleveland. Just consistent top 10-ish receiver. I really thought the 49ers were going to win this game pretty easily, especially without Deshaun Watson. That was my bet of the week. I continue to just be terrible at making bets. So whatever I say, fade me. But
Same here.
good win for the Browns. Very good win for the Browns. This division is looking like a dogfight. So just every win you get, you're happy with.
All right, moving on here. Panthers at Dolphins. The Panthers went up 14-0 early in this game, and they looked like they had a chance. Adam Thielen, Chuba Hubbard scoring. They looked to be on upset watch. That ended up not being the case in this one. Adam Thielen, like I said, has been amazing this year. Has been a real focal point of this offense, and I think you can hang your hat on that first 14-0 performance if you're the Panthers and just continue to lose.
I mean, I'm obviously a big fan of this. I was rooting against the Panthers since we made that trade back in March. But they went up 14-0. Looked like it was going to be a scary thing because the Bears were looking awful and then the Panthers were looking good. But then Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle started doing their thing, and Tua started hitting all those intermediate throws and really just started tearing them apart. Another really good game for Raheem Mostert in the absence of Devon Achane. And him, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, like I mentioned before, they all had, I think, 5 total touchdowns between the 3 of them, which is insane to me that an offense can just have a lot of touchdowns and it just seems normal for them. But Dolphins, they're a top team in the AFC. We've known this. The Panthers, they're a bottom team in the NFC. We've known this. And luckily for the Bears, the only thing that they could really be excited about this year is the Panthers being as shitty as they are.
Yeah, Panthers are 0-6 for the first time since 1998. So not the start you wanted in Bryce Young's career. Adam Thielen continues to be his only real weapon. And then Chuba Hubbard had a solid game too. I was not able to see it, but I heard Laviska Shenault had a very scary injury. So prayers for him. Panthers, they, like you guys said, they went up early. They looked all right. And then the Dolphins realized that the game started and they just went in there and dominated. Good bounce back from a rough start. Mostert had a great game. Tyreek had a great game. He cramped up, but he's able to come back. Good game for the Dolphins, I guess. Got to look at what happened early and not let it happen again. Good one for the Dolphins.
Yep, Dolphins start slow on the offensive end, but they still lock in, put up 35 points on offense. They have the pick 6 as well to make it 42. The Miami offense just marches down and they score whenever they need to, and it's really scary to watch. This offense is just at will, just amazing, and it looks so simple to them. That's what happens when you have that much speed. And Jalen Ramsey is going to be back soon. He might practice this week. That just makes this team scarier.
Yeah, he's looking to return at, I think, some point next month, which is November, which is, like you said, real scary because this team, it's hard to imagine how they can get better. That's definitely one big way how. One other thing I wanted to point out was Adam Thielen, like you talked about, Mike, he's been phenomenal for Bryce Young for this early part of his career. We talked about how this receiving group as a whole is really mid. They are, but Adam Thielen has really emerged as just a Michael Thomas type of player where he's just getting a lot of receptions, a lot of targets every game for a good amount of yards, and just being kind of a security blanket for Bryce Young in his rookie year.
And just like Adam Thielen, for the Dolphins, Raheem Mostert continues to be good. I know you guys mentioned it. No Devon Achane. They didn't activate Jeff Wilson, but Mostert continues to dominate. In his day with a lot of young running backs, he's 31 years old and 115 yards, 2 touchdowns. Just kind of cool to see. And the Panthers continue to be the last winless team in the NFL, and now the only team in the NFL with a 0 in their record. So good win for the Dolphins. They bounced back and dominated after the 14-0 deficit.
Yep. Moving on here, Seahawks at Bengals. Bengals got another win here at home. Geno finally got sloppy today. He's been taking care of the ball super well his entire tenure so far with I don't know if you call it a tenure yet, but with the Seahawks, he's been very, very good at taking care of the ball. He was not that today. Cincy defense played really well, and they get their team back to 500. There's a lot of struggles, a lot of question marks early in the season. But I think if you told any Bengals fan at that point that they could have 3-3 after week 6, I think they'd take that, and they're sitting at a good spot now.
Yeah, Bengals definitely needed this win, especially being at home. Burrow, he wasn't awful, but he also he wasn't anything special. Jamar Chase, he got the ball a lot in the first half, but kind of slowed down in the second. No run game really for the Bengals today. I noticed that while I was catching up on some highlights. But on the Seahawks side, Kenneth Walker had another solid day. He's stacking up some really solid weeks back to back to back. Geno Smith, like you said, Josh, he really got sloppy. I think the 2 turnovers were really the Seahawks undoing in this game. But Tyler Lockett had his quarterly big day with 6 catches for 94 yards, and DK Metcalf, he had like 10 targets but only 4 catches. So I think part of that's due to Geno kind of just being inconsistent today. But other than that, I think the Bengals really just they needed this win to like we were talking about with the Browns. They need to keep pace in this division full of some really solid teams.
Yeah, and the big story of the game was the Bengals defense. They didn't break. Seahawks were 1-5 in the red zone today. They forced Geno Smith into turnovers. BJ Hill continues to have a great start to his season. They had 4 sacks. The defense looked really good today for him. On the Seahawks side of the ball, Kenneth Walker, again, another good game. His fourth straight game with a touchdown. So he continues to have a solid season. Their offense just struggled to find the end zone, and the Bengals were able to do just enough to win the game. They really need to start getting a run game involved. They need to keep getting the ball to Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow, he looked healthier today. He had a couple of plays where he was running around in the pocket, just making stuff happen like the old Joe Burrow. So hopefully he continues to stay healthy or get healthier.
Yep. The Seahawks ran it pretty well early. That ended up not being the case as the game progressed. Cincinnati really tightened it up on defense. They looked good. The Seahawks are just a really inconsistent team as a whole. I mean, some nights, I mean, we saw week 2, they went toe to toe with the Lions, and they're the Lions' only loss in that overtime game in Detroit. And then they go and they play a Bengals team that didn't play phenomenal today. They can't get the win. They go play a bad Giants team. They blow them out. They're just all over the place, kind of. I think they're in this category with me, kind of, with like the Commanders and those teams that I don't fully know what we're getting from them. I think the Seahawks are better than the Commanders and those teams, but for the most part, they're pretty random. And then, yeah, like I said, the Bengals are in a much better position now. And Joe Burrow just has to continue to force the ball to Jamar Chase. When he does that, good things happen. You don't want to stare down your receivers ever, but it seems that when Joe Burrow is targeting Jamar Chase, wins are produced.
Yeah, I completely agree. But on the Seahawks side, I'm really interested to see how the rest of the year goes with their trio of really talented receivers, especially Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, he's been not invisible the first few weeks, but with so many talented players around him, it's really tough to get him the targets that he really deserves. He only had 4 catches for just under 50 yards today, and it feels like he hasn't had really that I've arrived game as a rookie that most first round rookies really have. So I'm really excited to see that when that happens. But as long as those other 2 are healthy, it's going to be hard to really see that, especially with the part he plays within their system.
Yeah, and then on to the Bengals receivers. T. Higgins, he was quiet today. He only had 2 catches, but it was nice to see Tyler Boyd get involved. He always flies under the radar. He's always been solid as a slot receiver. Today he had 7 catches. So Joe Burrow looking at his guy, touchdown for him too. These Bengals receivers and the Seahawks receiving core, those are 2 of the best trio of receivers in the NFL. So it's nice to see those. And then the Bengals versus the Seahawks young secondary was a fun matchup to watch. Big win for the Bengals. They needed it. They have a tough 2 weeks coming up with the 49ers and I think Chiefs. So they really needed to get this one going into those 2 matchups.
Yep. Moving on, Saints at Texans. The Texans get a win versus the Saints team. CJ Stroud throws his first pick, but he does not lose possession of the ball on that play as it is fumbled and re-recovered by the Texans, and they end up scoring a touchdown on that drive. So I think that says a lot about CJ Stroud to be able to regroup and make a touchdown drive on a possession where you threw your very first ever NFL interception. You're down on yourself. You don't know how to react in that situation. You go down, you still go score a touchdown. Back and forth really in the first half for these offenses. Both teams really kind of lost it in the second half on the offensive end. They both punted a ton. The game ended up being 3-3 in the second half. So it was a lot. It was a big punt fest and a big turnover fest in the second half. 2 teams that I think are in this middle group of teams that I've mentioned. I think they're in there with Washington. I think they're in there with Atlanta. The Seahawks, I think, are on a little bit of an upper echelon of those teams, but I think the Seahawks could be included in that little group as well of teams that we don't know really if they're going to go there and be a 7-6 seed wildcard team or if they're going to be picking in the top 10. A lot of those teams are wild cards, and I think both of these teams are in that group. And Alvin Kamara, once again, is an integral part of this offense for the Saints, and he needs to continue to stay out there and open up this offense. But Texans defense continues to play well.
Yeah, you kind of took the words out of my mouth. CJ Stroud, he bounced back from that interception. I know I mentioned or referenced Ted Lasso with a tweet I made over the weekend with Connor Bedard and his role within the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm going to reference him once again. CJ Stroud, he had the mentality of a goldfish. He forgot about that interception, came down and scored a touchdown. He played really well today for the most part, outside of that interception and a couple bad reads that could have been really bad, to be honest, but he's been really good up until this point. So I think you can excuse that against a solid Saints defense. And there was very little. Was Tank Dell playing today?
No.
No, okay, so that makes sense. Never mind. But Saints, like you said, Josh, Alvin Kamara, good to see him back and becoming a very important part of this offense with Mike Thomas and Chris Olave, who almost topped 100 yards again today. So that was good to see.
Yeah, CJ Stroud had 191 pass attempts before throwing his first career INT, second in the rookie all-time pass attempts without an INT to Kyler Murray. They were able to keep the ball on a crazy play, which was funny to watch. And like you said, Josh, he stayed calm and they ended up getting a touchdown drive. CJ Stroud looked great in the first half, and both teams in the second half, like you said, they kind of just lost it. The Texans were able to just hold on and win. And on the same side of the ball, they had chances multiple times to win or to just get back in the game, tie it. Goopy missed 2 kicks. And then on the offensive side of the ball, Rashid Shaheed had a solid game. He only had 2 catches, but for 85 yards and a touchdown. Olave continues to have a good season, 7 catches for 96 yards. And like you guys said, Kamara had a solid game. Michael Thomas, 5 catches as well. Game the Saints probably really wanted to win, but the Texans were able to protect their home territory and win the game and go 3-3 into the bye week.
Yeah, as impressive as CJ Stroud has been, he's been getting all the talk as far as this team is. This Texans defense has been phenomenal this season so far. They gave up 25 points in week 1 and 31 in week 2. And then since then, it's been 17, 6, 21, and now 13 this week. They've really bounced back. They get to go and play the Panthers next week and then the Buccaneers. If they can come out and win both of those games, it's at Carolina and then the Buccaneers come to Houston. They win both those games and they're sitting at 5-3. Now we're talking about it being a division with them and the Jags. Like I said before, I don't really think either of the other teams have much of a chance, especially with the Anthony Richardson injury. But this Texans team, they had a great offseason. They got a coach that was going to bring a new culture into a team that's had a revolving door of coaches in the past half decade. And now here you are. You're sitting at 3-3 with your rookie quarterback playing well. And I think you got to be happy if you're a Texans fan. And the Saints, like I said, another one of those wild card teams. Don't know what to think about them yet.
Something we've really looked at rookie quarterbacks is their situations when they come into the NFL. And CJ Stroud, he kind of drew the short straw with this one, kind of like Bryce Young did. But the good ones, they really do overcome those situations. Andrew Luck, he overcame. Justin Herbert, he overcame. And now CJ Stroud, he's looking like that next quarterback who, despite his really bad situation, he's overcoming it. And despite the team playing really well, he's also playing well, and it's turning into some winning football. I think you mentioned it last week, Josh, that if a young quarterback learns how to win right away, it kind of sticks with them. And guys like Justin Fields or maybe even Zach Wilson early on in their careers, they didn't win a lot. So, and that's kind of reflecting now with one of their situations not being the best and one of them just getting benched to start this year. But CJ Stroud, he's winning these games with a less than ideal supporting cast, and it's really impressive to me. On the Saints side, I've been really impressed with the emergence of Rashid Shaheed. He's been able to take the top off of defense, and he's been very integral to the vertical passing game that the Saints might want to explore a little bit more of. He can open things up for Kamara underneath and Michael Thomas and Olave in the intermediate game.
Yeah, he's been very impressive so far this year, and like you said, so is CJ Stroud. It's a real bummer that we won't get to see this division with all 3 young quarterbacks go at it, possibly all 4 young quarterbacks go at it. But CJ Stroud, he's looked like the best rookie quarterback, and it hasn't really been a competition at this point. And DeMeco Ryans, he might at this point look like the best rookie coach so far. And if this team can continue to succeed, I think he should be in the race for coach of the year. The Texans, they've exceeded most expectations so far, especially CJ Stroud. Nico Collins has looked solid so far this year. Just big win for the Texans. Keeps them almost on pace with the Jags, on pace with the Colts. So big win for the Texans.
All right, moving on to Lions at Bucks. The Lions once again beat an inferior team by 2 touchdowns. This is the 4th week in a row that that's happened. They have that tough loss to Seattle in overtime in week 2. And then since then, you beat the Falcons by 2 touchdowns. You go into Green Bay, beat them by 2 touchdowns, beat Carolina at home by 2 touchdowns, and then go into Tampa and beat them by 2 touchdowns. That's just the response you like to see from a young team with a lot of hype. The Lions didn't have their RB1 or RB2 today for most of the game, with Dave Montgomery getting a rib injury early on. So their run game was pretty weak, but they adapted, and Goff just went in there and he sliced up the Bucks defense. This is the Bucks defense that in the bye week got healthy on both sides of the ball, especially in the secondary. And this defense is really, really competitive. Although they lost today, and although at times they looked like they were getting diced up, the red zone defense was phenomenal. They've been one of the best red zone defense teams in the league this season. So I think that's very promising for the Bucks. The Lions, however, are now sitting at 5-1. Like I mentioned, they're tied with the Eagles and the Niners for first in the NFC, with both those teams losing this week. The Lions are 5th in point differential so far. So they're beating teams, like I said, by they're out there and they're covering spreads. They're 5-1 against the spread as well, with that one loss being that Seahawks game again. And their defense was phenomenal for the 4th straight week. They go out there and they set the tone. They're forcing 3-and-outs early. They're forcing early turnovers, and that's how you win games, especially for a team that is going to run the ball down your throat. That was not the case today, but it worked out. Ben Johnson adapted, and they got the win.
Yeah, I was very impressed with what Ben Johnson and company was able to do without a strong running game for a majority of the game. So they were able to, like you said, just force a lot of 3-and-outs on the defensive side, get their offense some good field position. And we saw, I believe, the 2nd career touchdown of Jameson Williams, who only had 2 catches today. Or 3rd career? Did he have one last week?
No, he had, I guess technically 3. The Lions fans like to count the one that got called back, but
So technically 2.
I know.
Okay.
We
so
count,
the one that doesn't count should have counted.
We count the 3rd one. We count the 3rd one. We count the 3rd one.
All right. But I'm no Lions fan. I believe that is number 2 on the stat sheet. But I said it before when he was coming back. He's got potential to be a 1,000-yard guy, but unfortunately, with a guy like Amon-Ra, who is very talented, he's going to take a lot of targets away because Amon-Ra is a monster. I think this was arguably one of his best receiving days in terms of yardage in his career, with 124 on 12 catches. I don't know exactly how many targets, but I assume it's a lot. Jared Goff was very solid, only 14 incompletions and 353 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was very nice today. And this Lions team, they are sitting at 5-1 without being at full strength the entire year so far. They were missing Jameson Williams for the first 4 weeks, and then they lost Emmanuel Mosley after not even 2 full quarters of play after he came back. And then they lost CJ Gardner-Johnson as well midway through the first little quarter of the season. So that's really unfortunate. But the fact that they're sitting at 5-1, despite all these injury issues, especially to their running back room, it's beyond impressive to me.
Yeah, and what really impressed me today, again, the Bucks don't have the greatest offense, but the Lions defense, again, was just able to dominate, held them to only 6 points. And the Bucks, they don't have a good run game, but the Lions just dominated. They held Rashad White to only 26 yards, Keyshawn Vaughn only 9 yards. Their run defense has been impressive all season, and that continued this week. And holding the Bucks to only 6 points, they have very good weapons in Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And they had solid games individually, but just really able to get nothing going. Baker couldn't really find a rhythm. And you guys both mentioned it for the Lions offense. They finally got to see a J-Mo touchdown this year in only his 2nd game. So good to see. I hope that continues. And like you said, Zach, Amon-Ra, just an incredible game. And a good game from Jared Goff. 353 yards, 115.9 QBR. They did lose David Montgomery, like you said, but hopefully the rib injury isn't too serious, and hopefully they get Gibbs back next week.
Yeah, I haven't been seeing a lot of top 10 rankings on Twitter or not for receivers, but I think at this point, if Amon-Ra's not in your top 10, you're crazy. This week, he goes and gets his career high in catches with 12, goes for 124 in the touchdown. I don't know if you guys got to see that play for the touchdown, but the way he reversed the field and then Craig Reynolds just comes in and has block of the year to lead to that 15-yard tiptoe touchdown for Amon-Ra. He was fantastic. Like you guys both said, J-Mo gets the big touchdown. He burnt the DB deep. Jared Goff, bit of an underthrow. Was a pretty windy day. You were seeing a lot of underthrows from Baker and Goff. Just a lot of balls going everywhere. But J-Mo turns around, he adapts to the ball, goes to his left, I believe, and comes down with the catch. Tough catch to make too. So that was phenomenal. You love to see that from him. He's starting to get his feet wet in this offense. The Lions are going to need to get one of Gibbs or Montgomery back, though, soon. Craig Reynolds is very good for his role, but he's not good enough to play the role that this Lions team needs him to play. And as we know, they rely heavily on the run. They like to run multiple running backs. And hopefully we can get Gibbs back in there next week. Maybe Montgomery needs to sit a little bit. I know he had some rib issues when he was in Chicago as well. So that's fairly concerning. But as for the Lions, they're going to Baltimore, and then the Raiders come to Detroit before they have the bye week. If you can go into the bye week 7-1, winning in Baltimore, and then coming home and beating the Raiders in prime time, I think you feel pretty good about that. Lions kind of got screwed with their bye week, having to play Monday night the week before it, but it is what it is. And I just love the direction that we're heading this year. And Goff has also been just phenomenal when he needs to be. If they need him to hand it off to David Montgomery 30 times in a game to win, that's what they're going to do. If there is no run game and they need him to dice up the other team's secondary, that's what he's going to do. And this Lions team, the only way I could describe it is I feel like they've done everything they wanted to do so far. And outside of getting burnt a little bit on defense in that Seahawks game, they've really imposed their will on every game they played.
Yeah, you kind of said it all really well. So I want to use my time to talk about Amon-Ra in my potential top 10 receiver rankings. I think he does crack my top 10 in that 8 to maybe 11 spot. But obviously, I may be a little biased. So I think I have DJ Moore slightly ahead of him. But that could just be me because Amon-Ra was playing with a Jared Goff, who was a very solid and stable passer compared to Teddy Bridgewater, Baker Mayfield. I think the back end of Cam Newton's prime and an inconsistent Justin Fields. But you're telling me with all that, he's put up 1,000 yards in 3 of his first 5 seasons, and he's on pace to finish with over 1,400 this year. I think you can call that guy a top 10 receiver. But that's just me. But Amon-Ra, he's been great this year. Great as a volume guy. Great as a pure attention guy. Call it gravity if you want to. He draws attention from a defense. He's been very good this year, and he's going to be a very important part of this Lions offense if they don't have one of their 2 guys at running back ready to go.
Yeah, and they're going to need one of those guys back no matter what next week. I feel like if they want to have a chance against that very good Ravens defense, and I guess we'll talk about it Tuesday, but I'm very excited to see that matchup. But Jamison Williams is going to be very important to this offense. They need him to be able to stretch the defense deep, open up the middle of the field for Amon-Ra, and just continue to have Jared Goff play as well as he has so far this year. And I think if you were to ask a Lions fan, I think every single one of them, if you would ask them if they wanted to be 5-1 at this point, I think they would all say 100%. So it's been a great start this year for the Lions. They just got to hope they can continue it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, at least me, I keep looking at that Seahawks loss like, damn, we should be sitting at 6-0 right now.
Every team has those, though.
Yeah,
it's like they should have won, and you're looking at it like, man, if only we won this, like, every team has those.
Yeah.
If the Bears won this week, I would have been looking at that Denver game like, damn, how the hell did we lose to that shit show?
Yeah, exactly.
And we could have been sitting at 3-3 somehow after the absolutely terrible first 3 weeks, but that's not even the case because we're 1-5. So,
but yeah, I think just on the JMO point, JMO and Amon-Ra stylistically could not be better fits for each other. You got JMO's just going to go out there, like you said, Mike, stretch the defense, and Amon-Ra is going to play underneath, get you 12 catches for 120 yards, and probably get in the end zone. As far as the running backs for next week, if neither of them are back, I would expect to see some running back work for Amon-Ra. They did it in the past. His rookie season, he did spend a lot of time in the backfield, getting inside zone handoffs, coming out of the backfield on wheel routes and whatnot. I wouldn't be shocked to see Ben Johnson go and throw that in there. That was pre-Ben Johnson. He was still on the team at that point and helping with play calling. But we'll see on that point. They're going to need a running back.
I don't think that'd be too smart because, I mean, you're already kind of unhealthy. So I think they maybe throw him back there on like a third down and have him like a choice route maybe out of the backfield.
It
But
wouldn't. They wouldn't like have him be like a lead
obviously
back. It would
not
be
like a 25 carry guy, but
yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like running him in between the tackles is just such a big risk for a team that's already like dealing with a lot of health issues.
It definitely
100%.
is a risk. Just knowing how the Lions like to play and they're getting confident, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to get a little cute with it.
I'd love to see like maybe a halfback pass from Amon Ra lining up back there and freak out the
Great.
defense. That'd be crazy.
That would be. I mean, allegedly he's got a little bit of an arm on him, but but we'll see. I know all receivers and skill position players like to say they got an arm on them, but moving on here to Pats at Raiders. Jimmy G. I don't know. We're sitting at 10:44 p.m. Eastern. I don't know if he's still in the hospital. I know as of a couple hours ago he was with a back injury. The Raiders only scored 3 offensive points with Hoyer in the time that he was out there after the Jimmy G injury, which was most of the second half. The Pats and Mac Jones just suck on offense. They're just completely horrible. This is a Raiders defense that has played scrappy the past 2 games and gotten good wins, but this Pat's offense is just horrendous. You got to think. I mean, we're going to have this conversation many more times before the season is over. But what happens with Bill Belichick after this season? If they get a brand new flashy quarterback, maybe he wants to say, or maybe he's just like, "Fuck this! I can't do this shit anymore." And honestly, I wouldn't blame him. But the Raiders, on the other hand, are finding ways to win ugly, and they're up to 500 now. So that's where you want to be.
The funny thing is with the whole Mac Jones thing is this 2021 draft class, everybody it feels like they've been fluctuating in terms of how they've fared in comparison to each other. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has been at the top since day one, honestly. But then last year you had Fields really rising, and then he fell at the start of this year. Then he rose again through weeks 4 and 5, and now he's back down again because he's hurt and he didn't look too great. Then Mac Jones, he started out really hot, but then he just fell off a cliff. Zach Wilson started off really bad. Then he's risen to the occasion the last few weeks and even getting a win today that we'll get to in a little bit. And then Trey Lance, he's out here just giving Dak Prescott all the 49ers plays and letting him throw 3 interceptions against them last week. But that's I think that's a 49ers MVP if I've ever seen one. But Mac Jones was not great today. It was nice to see Ezekiel Elliott kind of unhook the trailer and get a touchdown, but unfortunately that was called back. I don't remember how long it was. It was like, what, 60 or maybe 70 yards that was. But he got real excited, looked like he was going to rip a suey in the end zone, but just fell on his back and got called back. So that was unfortunate. But if the Patriots want to have any sort of success, they're going to have to stem it all from the run game because they have no weapons in the receiving room. Mike Gesicki's only getting like 30% of the snaps because he can't run block. And Hunter Henry's just not a great pass catcher. So they've just got to catch 22 in that spot, it seems like. Kendrick Bourne led them in receiving today with 10 catches and 89 yards, which if you would have told me a year ago that Kendrick Bourne would lead the Patriots in receiving yards a year from now, I'd be like, no fucking chance. But Malik Cunningham was activated to the active roster today. He played a little bit of I think he played a little bit of receiver, just a little decoy at some point in games, but in the game. But outside of that, I really don't have much else.
Yeah, and they actually signed Malik Cunningham to a 3-year deal, which was kind of came out of nowhere. But Mac Jones, he looked rough for most of the game. He looked better this week than he had in previous weeks. Still, he just didn't look great. And then out of nowhere on the last possession, he threw a beautiful ball just right in the bucket to Devontae Parker that was broken up. But at this point, if you're the Patriots, you kind of just have to continue the season, look forward to the draft. You don't know what's going to be with Bill Belichick, and he now moves to 0-3 against his former student in Josh McDaniels. Another tight home win for the Raiders. Max Crosby looked great again, had the game-winning safety sack. And like you touched on, Josh, the Jimmy G back injury. It was very surprising to see Brian Hoyer come in as a backup, who he had a nice throw, but I really thought AOC was coming in. I don't know when they decided Brian Hoyer was the backup. But the Raiders equipped 20 points for the first time this year, so big for them. They just got to continue kind of winning games like this that are just scrappy. I don't really know what to expect from the Raiders. I think they're in like a tier kind of below I don't know what they are yet, but good win. Patriots just continue to look ugly.
Yep. I just want to shout out Max Crosby for that safety. They were up 19-17, I believe, at that point. The line was 3. So thank you, sir, for that one. Greatly appreciated. I needed to be on a good side of one after the debacle with Sean McVay, that asshole. But moving on for the Raiders, like you said, Mike, I was pretty shocked to see Brian Hoyer as well. Hopefully going forward, we see AOC. It seems like we're gonna miss at least a few weeks of Jimmy G. I would like to see AOC get a full shot in this offense. He got sacked 7 times in his first game, 6 by Khalil Mack, and he I think he deserves a full shot. As for the Raiders going forward, like you said, they're sitting at 3-3. Their next 4 games are at Bears, at Lions, versus Giants, versus Jets. So, I mean, I look at those games outside of the Lions game, they don't have a chance in, but the Bears, Giants, and Jets, they all have a chance in those games. So I think if you're the Raiders and you go 3-1 in those games and you're sitting at 6-4, that's an unimaginable start that they could have predicted in the beginning of the season. And that's not unfathomable. I mean, we're watching right now the Giants down by 1 to the Bills in the fourth quarter. But outside of that, the Giants have looked horrible. The Jets have been scrappy at times, but we know what their offense is. So we'll see what we see from the Raiders going forward. But I don't think it's impossible to look at this team in week 10 and they're over 500.
I completely agree, honestly, because when before Jimmy G got hurt, he was playing really well. I know Michael Mayer had like 4 catches in the first quarter, but then they kind of stopped going to him because Brian Hoyer doesn't really have that connection with him like Jimmy G does. And Josh Jacobs, he had an okay day, but then I think Devontae Adams on that interception, or it really shouldn't have been an interception. He just got absolutely speared by the dropping safety on that on the slant or dig route that he was making. And he was slow to get up, and I think he missed a few snaps, but he came back later on. So that's definitely something to look at. But if they're missing Jimmy G and or Devontae Adams for an extended period of time, those winnable games could turn into like a nightmare scenario where you have to start looking towards Caleb Williams territory come maybe early December.
Yeah, and the Raiders are always a team that I feel like halfway through the season they look like they have a chance at the playoffs, and then just a late season collapse, or they make the playoffs and are out early. But you touched on it. I was very happy to see Michael Mayer. I said it last week. They finally started getting him involved a little bit, and today he was their leading pass catcher with 75 yards. So that's stuff you like to see. And Jacoby Myers continues to have a great start to the season. He's been great for the Raiders, and they got Josh Jacobs involved again. 25 carries for Josh Jacobs. That's Raiders football. 77 yards. So it's only 3 yards a carry, but still got to feed your best player on the offensive side of the ball. But good win for the Raiders. Patriots, we kind of know what they are at this point. They're 1-5. There's not much hope on the offensive side of the ball, and on the defensive side of the ball, they're just too banged up to compete. So just got to keep grinding, and Raiders got to just find a way to get some wins and try to sneak into the playoffs.
Yep, moving on here to Cardinals at Rams. The Cardinals led this game at halftime 9-6, but the Rams bounced back and they outscored them 20-0 in the second half. So that's pretty on brand for the Cardinals. They're continuing to stay in games early, and then they end up losing. They continue to tank. I think that's a good sign if you're Jonathan Gannon. Your ownership and your fans, for the most part, don't want you to win games. They want you to lose, but you're out there and you're showing promise, and he's not going to get fired after this year, I don't think. Barring anything crazy happening. But yeah, so I think that's really good for him. And the Cardinals are continuing to just stay in these games and then end up losing. The Rams ran all over the Cardinals with Kyren Williams. What a find for the Rams with Kyren Williams. He's been fantastic so far. And that continues today. And this Rams offense, just with Cooper Kupp, they're explosive. Like we said, he just completely unlocks everything this team has. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyren Williams, and led by the veteran in Matt Stafford, who knows how to win games. And the Rams are up to 500 now, sitting in a good spot. Rams are also in this in that group I was saying, in my opinion, with the Falcons and the Commanders and all those kind of teams, Saints, Texans.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, they're sitting at 3-3, and the Seahawks are at 3-2 because of that bye week. Not that they would have lost if they would have played, but they're in the mix for maybe a wild card spot if they can stay healthy and Stafford can continue to keep slinging it to his what seems to be a plethora of weapons. Puka had a quiet game with only 4 catches and 26 yards, but that was because it was the Cooper Kupp show today. He had a couple deep passes and that touchdown that was pretty cool. But on the Cardinal side, I'm glad to see that they're in these games because I feel like they're going to accidentally screw up and win one and just help out the Bears with the draft position. But they got to figure something out with running the ball. I know they were missing James Conner today, but Josh Dobbs being your leading rusher when he's not a running quarterback like a Kyler Murray or a Lamar Jackson or a Justin Fields or even a Josh Allen, that just can't happen. But if they want to continue to be competitive in these games, they got to find a running game. And I feel like they're finding a nice little duo between Michael Wilson and Marquise Brown. Michael Wilson, I talked about him a little while ago because I heard of him in training camp and preseason. He's been a very nice addition to the receiving group, especially one that's kind of just got a lot of nobodies outside of Marquise Brown. So that's really good to see. But Rams, this game didn't feel like it was a semi blowout, like a multiple score game blowout. I feel like the Rams, they kind of just pulled away at the end. But like you said, Josh, the Cardinals, they continue to be in these games, and I'm really all here for it.
Yeah, the Cardinals are just not a second half team at all. You touched on this week being they lost 20 on the second half. On the season now, they are 98-30 in the second half. So they really just don't have in the second half. And like you said, Zach, the lack of a run game is really hurting them. In the first half, they only had 5 total yards rushing the ball with only 3 carries, which is just not going to win you football games. And then you guys both touched on it. I think Kyron Williams, he's been very good for them. He missed most of last season, I think, with a wrist injury. But ever since he's really gotten this RB1 role, he's been standing out. Ronnie Rivers has been a solid backup to him. And this this Rams offense, it's looked solid all year, and I definitely think they could be fighting for a wild card spot just because of how explosive their offense can be with such a great coach and Sean McVay. And then you got just the superstar of Aaron Donald on the defense that can find a way to win you a game on the defensive side of the ball. It's a scrappy team. It's in the middle tier of teams, but I definitely can see them find a way to the wild card.
Yeah, I could as well. This team, their recipe for success is going to be protecting Matthew Stafford and Matthew Stafford not making mistakes. Today, he doesn't turn the ball over. He gets sacked only 3 times, which is down compared to what it's been so far in this season. Like you touched on, their defense played well today as well. I said in the preseason, I was seeing a lot of hype about Byron Young getting a lot of first team reps, and then he goes out here second in tackles today. He's been a really good piece for this defensive line so far in the season of the Rams. And as a whole, I think the Rams are just really impressing. They're sitting at 3-3. They have a loss to the Bengals, I remember, on that one game. And then who are their other losses here? 49ers by 7 and the Eagles. So I think for the most part, I think you can be happy as a Rams fan. You got going forward, you got Steelers, Cowboys, Packers, Seahawks. A couple of those games there are pretty winnable, especially with how we've seen the Cowboys and the Seahawks play at times, which is not good. Even though they are pretty good teams. But we'll see. I think the Rams can definitely steal some games. They're gonna, if they don't make the wild card, they're gonna ruin some other team's playoff chances, I bet.
I do want to take my time. I don't have much else to say about this game, but I will take my time to say I'm sorry to the Rams fans. I believe I was talking a lot of shit about your team in the offseason, saying that, man, you guys won't win a lot of games, but you're sitting at 3-3 through 6 games, and you found a couple gems with Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua. So that's definitely something to be proud of. You can pat yourself on the back for that one. You guys both touched on it. We all did. It was they could be looking at a wild card spot, like a 6 or 7 seed come December. And like you said, Josh, they could ruin a team's playoff chances because they've got the talent, they've got the veteran leadership with McVay, who is a very young head coach. I think still the youngest in the league, but he's been around the block for a little while. And Stafford, who has been throwing for God knows how long. But this is a solid football team, and they are in that middle tier of like, who are you? But you guys can still win games if you want. But against this Cardinals team, I'm not shocked that they won, but it's definitely something to look at going forward in their playoff chances.
Yeah, I think we said in the offseason that Sean McVay, Aaron Donald, and this team kind of just like one foot out the door. And so far, start this year, they really haven't. They've looked both feet in. They've been playing great. They've found gems in Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams. And on the defensive side of the ball, they've played well enough, and their offensive line has really stepped up. I was really didn't think this offensive line was going to be much in the offseason, and they're not the best, but they're definitely not the worst. So they're doing just enough. They can keep winning games. They're a solid football team, and they're a tough team to play against.
Okay, moving on to the next game here. Eagles at Jets. Jets with another shocking win, second shocking win of the week with the Browns beating the Niners. Jalen Hurts shockingly struggles and throws 3 picks to this Jets defense that didn't have Reed or Sauce Gardner. Didn't have cornerback 1, didn't have cornerback 2, and they go and they beat one of the best teams in the league. Jets' last interception to really seal that game was just a horrible read from Jalen Hurts. He threw it to, I believe, Dallas Goedert. There was DBs on both sides of him, and he throws it off his back foot, falling back. And if I don't remember who got the pick, but if he didn't get it, the other defender was going to get it. So Hurts was just really, he was struggling all day. And the Jets go out there and they get a scrappy win at home. Zach Wilson doesn't play phenomenal, but they move up to, I believe, 3-3 now? And let's see. 3-3. And then they beat a team that was 5-0. So great work from the Jets today.
Yeah, Jets really got it done when it counted, especially on the defense. They had, I think, 4 takeaways in total, and they would pan to Robert Saleh after every single one of them, and he'd be getting hype all with his defenders. Quinnen Williams got his first career interception today from the D-line spot, so that was good to see. But like you said, Josh, Hurts did not play well today, especially on that final interception that he had. It was not a good look at all. And on that final drive, I think he just went 4 and out. And on the very last play, he had a chance to rip it to Devonta Smith down the left seam in between the 2 safeties. But he just decided to dance left a little bit, like the announcers said, and he took an extra 2 ticks to really rip it, and that kind of became his own undoing on that play. They couldn't really run the ball very well. DeAndre Swift was kind of bottled up for the first time this year. And that's saying much. That's saying a lot because he's been phenomenal running between the tackles of this Eagles O-line so far this year. AJ Brown had yet another phenomenal game, especially with that catch on the left sideline in the second half that spent an eternity being reviewed, in my opinion. And I still think you could argue it was or wasn't a catch, but it was solid either way. Garrett Wilson, once again, just being force-fed targets, got 8 catches for 90 yards today. The Wilson to Wilson connection is good enough to continue to move the chains. Garrett Wilson would have topped 100 if it weren't for that Allen Lazard, I believe, illegal block in the back on a DB on that free play that Zach Wilson ended up finding him on. But it's whatever. They got the win. But the Jets D-line really kind of just set the tone up front. They played really well. They got to Hurts more often than not. They made him move a lot, but Hurts also made a lot of plays on the move as well, especially in the first half. Second half, he kind of fell apart, but yeah, the Jets defense really kind of just dominated up front for this one.
Yeah, especially Jermaine Johnson. He had a great game. Quinnen Williams, like you said, he had the pick. He had a great game. Just a big win by the New York Jets. Big for their momentum. Aaron Rodgers was on the field ripping balls a little bit before the game. Pause. But the Eagles have been flirting with the loss all season. We saw it in the Commanders game. They could have got the loss if they had called the Terry McLaurin play in bounds. And today they didn't have enough to get it done. Hurts had a bad game. But he did have to throw the ball 45 times because of the run game struggling. And that's just not the recipe for Eagles success. Again, they struggled in the red zone. Jason Kelce said in his podcast, the reason why he was so pissed last week was really because the red zone offense was terrible and they just needed to get something going. Just big for the Jets. Their defense just shows out again in the big game. Outside of the Dallas game, they've been in every game really. And Zach Wilson has done just enough to win it. Just big win for New York Jets to keep them in this hunt to try to survive if Rodgers can't come back, which I still don't know how it would happen, but somehow he looks better every week.
He was out there without crutches today. He was throwing the ball.
He's throwing the ball. He's ripping the ball down.
I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, we'll see. Zach Wilson, though, has been pretty good the past 3 weeks since that Kansas City game. So it's good to see him get his confidence. Like you said, it finally caught up to him. I had it written down. The Eagles' offensive woes have just finally caught up to him, man. It was a matter of time. They had been running the ball well, but overall, Jalen Hurts has not had a great start to the season through 5 weeks at the time. And then this week, they're playing a Jets defense, like I said, down 2 corners. And they completely locked down Jalen Hurts and played great. They were taking their points, as the Jets do, when they can't get in the end zone. Zach Wilson, he might not be a good enough quarterback to get you in the end zone, but he is definitely good enough to get you in field goal range. That's what he did today, and it ended up catching up to them, and they got the pick late, and then Breece Hall, quick 9-yard run. That's an opportunity where you're a team that struggles like the Jets. You get that big pick six inside the 10, and then maybe you go 3 and out and have to kick the field goal. Brees Hall, first carry, just immediately scores, sets the tone, and they go on to win the game on defense, where they were winning it all game. But yeah, huge game for the Jets, and like I've been saying, Eagles are now tied with the Lions and the Niners at 5-1, in a NFC that looks to be top three heavy so far.
This is another division where the top team is kind of far and away the best team, where with the Miami Dolphins. But the New York Jets, they could be sitting tied with the Buffalo Bills, depending on what happens on this fourth down, or whatever happens on this fourth down. But we'll get to that when we recap the game. They're sitting at 3-3, and they're not neck and neck with the Dolphins, but they're still in the wild card race, kind of like how we were talking about with the Rams being relatively near the 49ers. And honestly, it's kind of funny situations because two undefeated teams, the two lead dogs in each of those divisions, went from 5-0 to 5-1, and them and the Rams are sitting at 3-3 for different reasons, obviously, but it's same records and situations nonetheless. Brees Hall really felt like he didn't have much going on the ground today, aside from that touchdown at the end, but he was really reliable as a target out of the backfield with 5 catches and 54 receiving yards. But just cannot be understated enough or overstated enough that Garrett Wilson, he's the true MVP of this offense. If he's getting a lot of targets, I think they will find a way to continue to move the ball because he will make plays. He's not going to go against a really good Eagles defense with James Bradbury across from him every single game. So he'll be able to create a lot more separation and win maybe a couple more jump balls because James Bradbury played really well in terms of jump ball coverage today. But Jets, they at home defended home turf. They got a gritty win against a really good team, and I'm looking forward to this Zach Wilson revenge tour this upcoming season.
Yeah, I hope it continues. And with Garrett Wilson, he had a great game, but there was a little worry there. He went down with kind of what almost looked like a non-contact knee injury, but he came back the next possession and was fine and continued to have a great game. And then the Eagle side of the ball, they continue to get A.J. Brown the ball. 7 catches, 131 yards. Just another great game for him. And Devontae Smith, he had a drop. He didn't have a great game. Only 5 catches, 44 yards. And then Dallas Goedert, again, another solid game for him. 5 catches, 42 yards. So they didn't have the run game. The pass game was all right, but you're the Eagles. You have the best offensive line. You really want to be running the football. Big win for the Jets that can keep them just in this hunt to, like I said, try to survive to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean the Jets do get the advantage of having Darius Slay and Jalen Carter out from the Eagles. They took advantage of that for sure. And yeah, I was talking about it on Twitter after this 4 o'clock slate. We're still going to talk about the Bills, but I think the only teams at this point that I can actually see winning the Super Bowl, barring a massive turnaround, are the Chiefs, Dolphins, Bills, Eagles, Niners, and Lions. I just think those 6 teams have really separated themselves from the pack. The Eagles have struggled on offensive times. The Chiefs have struggled on offensive times. But overall, those are the teams that I feel like have it talent-wise, performance-wise, coaching that can actually go and make some noise in the playoffs. There are some other teams, of course, like the Cowboys and the Ravens that also could. But yeah, I think we're at a point in the season where we can start looking at which teams just have no chance. And there are some teams that do not.
I wonder which ones those are, but at least we get to win the draft. How about that? But yeah, that's really all I have on that one. I'm down to move on to this Giants Bills. If you want to just talk about it, even though the result's not in yet.
Yeah, we're sitting at 14-9 with 1:40 left in this one. The Bills are a first down away from winning it. And if something massive changes in the next couple of minutes as we're talking about this, we will discuss that. But the Giants look like they're about to move into their 13th straight quarter without an offensive touchdown, which is honestly pretty impressive that this team is this historically bad. To credit the Giants a little bit today, though, they did hang in this game until literally the final quarter. The Bills are at 14-9 right now, and all 14 points have come from 2 big touchdown drives here in the fourth quarter for the Bills. But the Giants were, they were winning for most of this game, 3-0, 6-0. They're running it really well with Saquon. He has 93 yards on 24 carries. They've been blocking really well for Saquon, which is not something that the Giants tend to do very well, is blocking. But they've been pretty good tonight. And I think this is a pretty promising performance for the Giants, honestly, especially without Daniel Jones in there. You go and you're taking one of the best teams in the league. One of the teams I just said, I think, is on the short list of teams that can win the Super Bowl. And they take them to the end here, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I honestly think this is a case of the Buffalo Bills kind of overlooking the Giants a little bit to their next game. I don't know exactly who they play, but they're probably better than the Giants. So it's easy to say that you might overlook them. But something to look at depending on the result of this game. The Giants had a chance to go and get 3 going into the half, and then Tyrod Taylor ended up audibling to a run play with no timeouts left. They just don't get back to the line to spike it in time, and then they don't get a free 3 points. So that could have made this game 12-14 going into that previous Giants drive, because the Bills have the ball now on a 3rd and 8. So that could have potentially changed the Giants' way of approaching that last drive. And oh wow, okay,
Underthrown ball from Josh Allen on 3rd and 8.
Okay, this is something now.
Still got to make that catch, Dawson Knox, but
100%.
Underthrown ball.
Kincaid's not even playing today, is he?
Yeah,
No.
And Tyler Bass. Oh my God, he missed it.
Did he
missed
really?
it. Tyler Bass missed it.
Wow. I'm sorry, Honk, but you said you can't imagine the team they play next week is worse. I think they might be. It is the New England Patriots.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Same
who they
tier.
were playing.
Same tier.
I didn't know who they were playing.
Yeah, they're both
So,
in
yeah,
they're in the
worse.
embarrassing tier.
Oh, jeez.
Both in the embarrassing tier.
That's tough.
Sadly for the Bills again, another
Did
game
you?
at home. They another sad injury. Damian Harris. He gave a thumbs up while he was going off the field, but he got taken out of the field in an ambulance. So praise to him. Hope he's okay. Buffalo just continues to have the injury bug. And I heard Mike Tirico say a little bit earlier that this game had the Giants were the biggest underdog so far in a game this year. And they're obviously going to cover. I think the spread might have been like 16.
14 and a half.
It's 14 and a half. That's what I thought it was, but that was before the Daniel Jones. I didn't know if that would affect it at all.
I think it's sad at 14 and a half, but either way, big spread. I think it's tied for the biggest spread with Miami and Carolina this week. Miami did end up covering that one somehow. But yeah, as we move on here, like we said, Tyler Bass missed the field goal. The Giants are currently driving. They're past the 50-yard line. 1 timeout, minute left. Tyrod Taylor legacy drive here, I think to say the least.
Yeah, and Wan'Dale Robinson continues to just be great for this Giants team. He's having another great game. I want to see. He just got another one, so I think he has 8 catches now for like 65 yards. So he's been one of the bright spots for this team at receiver. Slayton has 3 catches for 63. They still are struggling to get Jalen Hyatt involved, so you would like to see that, but they got Tyrod Taylor out there. So
Saquon up to 27 touches now in his first game back, 24 carries. Just got his second and third catch on this final drive here.
Giants defense has low-key been really impressive the last little bit. I mean, the week prior, they only allowed 17 to the Seahawks, and if it weren't for Devon Witherspoon pick 6, I believe, they would have held them under. The Seahawks would not have scored 20. And then last week they held the Dolphins to only 31, which is a crazy thing to say, but considering they scored 70 a few weeks ago, and then they had 42 today after a really, really, really slow start, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. And they're keeping Buffalo, a team that's in at least Josh's Super Bowl bubble, to 14 through 4 quarters. So if it weren't for this inconsistent O-line, maybe they can make some noise, but such a slow start and
there's Hyatt
at all.
There's Hyatt.
Yeah, wouldn't it be crazy if they get that touchdown right here?
That would be.
Maybe I'd reverse jinx. I gave him the 13th
we jinxed a lot of things this week. This could be another one.
I would like to see this one though.
How many games did we pick this week where all 3 of us picked the same team and that team lost? I mean, it was Chicago.
I think it had to be
a few, yeah.
I could pull it up, but
the Eagles, the Niners, the Bears,
Falcons,
right?
The Falcons.
I think we did go 3 for 3 on Falcons too.
Yeah, I think you got us maybe by one game this week, Zach.
Think so?
Definitely.
I think so.
That'd be nice because that'll tie
Which
me
would
with
tie
you.
that would tie us at the top. Yeah.
Am I sitting last all by myself?
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say to the dude who's been commenting that he doesn't believe our records on the screen. Those are our game picking records. Those are not our betting records. Nobody here is going 52-30 gambling. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a podcast. I think we'd be selling these picks somewhere.
But yeah, we went over on Chicago, San Francisco, Philly, and then you missed on Seattle, Cincy, and then I think we were pretty consistent outside of that.
I got the game back on the Texans.
Oh, and then Mike missed on New Orleans and Houston
And Indy.
and Jacksonville, Indy.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I think we were all the same.
Just trying to do too much and it haunts me.
I mean, your reasoning was kind of sound with the whole like you get to choose who you play after the
I
London.
still don't know if that's real or not,
I think they made if they did, I think they made the right choice.
Yeah, I'd say
Clearly, they won by they won by 17.
Anthony Richardson was hurt.
Yeah, so you were saying the thing about the choice though, but then we were talking about it today, Mike. The Ravens are coming back from London. They're not taking the bye and they're playing the Lions. I find it very hard to believe that preseason they chose.
That doesn't seem right. Maybe it's because Jacksonville had 2 straight in London.
This
whole thing stems from Sauce Gardner saying it. So I found the source.
I think the whole thing. I've heard of the choosing your bye or not thing from London. I had not heard of the picking your opponent.
Yeah, Sauce Gardner just kept saying they chose us last year. So, and that seems to be what Robert Saleh told the team. So he could have just been like,
it's 4th down. Here we go. Moment of truth here. 4th and 5. 22 seconds left. Ball on the
Diggs.
27.
Great game time catches, 100 yards too. So
right.
Taylor drops back. Steps.
He also
up,
had a couple drop too.
Throws a missile to Jalen Hyatt. Who's now
Did he convert?
I guess I jinxed that.
No, we're sitting at 9 seconds left. Second and 10 at the 15-yard line. They got probably 2 plays left, maybe.
Oh my goodness! Oh wow, he took a shot. I'm like 7 or 8 seconds behind you guys.
I'm like 5 seconds behind you, but I like your play-by-play here.
I'm just gonna close my eyes and just let you describe it to me.
We'll see. I think they got 2 plays here. 9 seconds. They can
give me your best. Give me your best.
As long as they don't run the ball like they did in the first half.
Yeah, we'll see.
I swear, if they run the ball, that'd be so.
Dable seems to be cooking something on the sidelines here.
How could he not be?
This is the most win
hired to do.
Here we go. 9 seconds. Play clock going to 3. Bills timeout.
So anticlimactic.
Yeah, they're really hoeing us here at the end. But
this is Dave. Is this Dable's first game against the Bills?
Yeah, I think
Did we even talk about that?
I said that in the preview. That's Dable.
Oh, you did, right?
The Giants have not lost a game in New York since 1993.
Really?
That is currently on the line. I mean, considering they only play Buffalo is the only team.
They play in New Jersey.
Yeah, Buffalo is the only team in.
I had to think for a second, like, is that real?
It's probably only like 4-0, but it's a stat.
I'd love a Darren Waller touchdown right here. I think they should probably target Darren Waller. He's your biggest weapon.
Just get him up the seam.
He's in the slot here, yeah. Yeah, Waller in the slot.
Get high on the outside, maybe you beat him.
Oh, Saquon. They got 2 running backs in the backfield here. Lined up on either side of Tyrod. Steps up in the pocket. Tyrod Taylor's taking off. They don't have any timeouts. He's got to get out of bounds, and he gets out of the time. 2 seconds left. Last play of the game coming up here. Down doesn't matter. Distance doesn't matter.
It does not. Bills cannot afford to fall to 3-3 here.
Oh my god.
Might have been a tight end in the backfield.
Electric finish to this game, though.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Tyrod Taylor putting together a legacy drive right here. 13 seasons. Legacy
he goes
drive.
From a few years removed from punctured lung by athletic trainer in Los Angeles to leading a New York drive down 5 to the Bills.
The Bills used their final timeout here with 2 seconds left.
Get them pass rushers back up.
Him and Geno Smith just seem like Geno Smith clearly is better at this point, but just kind of similar careers, except for Geno Smith really gets his opportunity. I think if
Mhm.
Tyrod really got a chance to really be a QB1 somewhere, he might have been able to have a
Maybe,
chance to be a
maybe,
quarterback.
maybe he still will get that chance somewhere.
I think
Who
he's a little too
knows?
old at this point.
Yeah, he is. He is getting up there.
I mean, he had that year in Buffalo where he brought him to the playoffs. So
Right. Was that in the EJ Manuel years, or was that a little bit after?
I think that was
It was
after.
after. Yeah, it was right
That's tough.
after. All right, here we go. Josh Allen once again not on the field and
In
with the
crucial
game on the
minutes.
line. Yeah, common theme. Josh
God.
Allen on the sidelines
Crazy
with a
thing. That
hat.
field goal is gonna matter.
Yeah,
Oh,
2 misses for bats,
here we
right?
go. Yep, empty set. Tyrod stepping up once again to the end zone. Nothing. Ball game.
that's tough.
Oh, flag! There's a
Oh.
flag! There's a
Oh,
flag on
no.
the field. Oh my God, we're gonna have
You could be
one
so
last
far ahead
play.
of us. You could just be joshing us right now, but
I'm not.
Oh, well, it was attempted to Waller too. It was a Waller target.
Pass interference defense.
oh my
Ball
Number
God,
reading
that's
lips that look like
crazy.
42.
So what is this?
43.
Is this gonna be 1 yard line? Do they tush push?
It's gonna be it's gonna be 1 yard line. Oh my
I
God.
don't know if they have
no,
enough
no.
facility.
Give it
for
They
that,
do
but-
not have the facility.
Saquon direct snap tush push. It has to.
That honestly might be the play call.
That might be something, but
You have to.
Yeah, it's PI. That's PI for sure. 1,000%.
I would have just liked a Waller touchdown.
What are the odds that this becomes the Raiders 49ers game where there's like 6 back-to-back flags with 0 seconds?
Oh,
Here
yeah.
we go.
Michael Crabtree.
0 seconds on the clock.
No timeouts for the Bills.
That's
Under
definitely
center.
a flag.
Tyler
100%
Taylor
flag.
pass. Waller gets batted away by Taron Johnson.
Why are they throwing the ball?
That's Taron Johnson, right? 7? Yeah.
Theron John, yeah.
And that's the game. Buffalo
Not-
escapes.
Not tush pushing there is insane.
And the streak ends. Well, the streak continues of the Giants not scoring touchdowns on
That's
offense.
tough.
Yeah,
But the
electric finish.
streak of New York wins ends.
Such an ugly game, but it was awesome.
Bills D line right up the middle got through there.
Oh, I think we've given plenty of thoughts on this game as
Yeah.
a whole.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So that will do it for our week 6
Solid rushing game for the
recap.
Bills.
Yes, that's a solid rushing game for the Bills, to say the least. Latavius Murray even got in on the action, 45 yards.
Yeah.
That's right.
But they had Bills escape, and that will do it for our Week 6 NFL recap. We will be back in a few days, probably uploading on Wednesday for our Week 7 preview. We will also talk about this past week in college football and or any other news in the sports world. Until then, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get notified whenever we drop a new video, and we'll see everyone in the next one.